The shovel hit something solid 3 feet down, and Sargent's entire body went rigid. That specific stillness that meant remains. But that was 4 days from now, and the real story begins on the morning Claire Hendricks learned that grief makes you a suspect. The county sheriff's cruiser rolled up the gravel drive at dawn, 7 weeks after they'd buried Marcus. Claire stood on the porch of the farmhouse she'd inherited along with 200 acres of debt, a failing well, and questions nobody wanted to answer. She was 28, 5'7" in her husband's old work boots, lean from missed meals and physical labor that had carved muscle into her shoulders and forearms. Her auburn hair, pulled back in a braid, showed copper in the early light. Her gray eyes, Marcus used to call them storm cloud eyes, carried the particular wariness of someone who'd learned trust was conditional. A thin scar crossed her right palm, where a hay baler had caught her at 16. Beside her, Sargent pressed against her leg. The German Shepherd was 90 pounds of black and tan, his left front leg bearing a shrapnel scar from Fallujah, his dark amber eyes tracking the approaching vehicle with trained intensity. They found each other at the veterans' shelter where Claire had volunteered after Marcus's funeral. Both of them medically retired, both carrying invisible wounds, both needing purpose. Sheriff Dobbs emerged from the cruiser, hat in hand, face carefully neutral. Behind him, a woman in a blazer stepped out, city haircut, expensive shoes, the kind of polish that didn't belong in Harlow County. Claire. Dobbs had known her since she was a child. The discomfort in his voice made her stomach drop. This is Detective Marsh from the state police. She has some questions about Marcus. Questions about what? Claire's voice was quiet, flat. The coroner ruled it an accident. Tractor rollover. We buried him. Marsh's smile didn't reach her eyes. May we come inside? The kitchen still smelled like the casseroles neighbors had stopped bringing 3 weeks ago. Claire poured coffee she didn't offer, waited. Marsh opened a folder. Your husband's life insurance policy was $300,000. Doubled for accidental death. I didn't know that until after he died. Marcus handled the paperwork. The tractor's hydraulics had been tampered with. Brake line deliberately cut. Marsh's tone was conversational, poisonous. The rollover wasn't an accident, Mrs. Hendricks. It was murder. The floor seemed to tilt. Claire gripped the table edge. Furthermore, Marsh continued, we have a witness who says you and Marcus fought constantly about money. That you wanted to sell the farm. He refused. That you were heard threatening him 2 days before he died. That's a lie. But Claire's mind was racing. Who? Who would say that? Dobbs wouldn't meet her eyes. Claire, where were you the morning Marcus died? In town. The feed store, then the bank trying to restructure our loans. I have receipts. Receipts prove you were in town. They don't prove you didn't sabotage the tractor the night before. Marsh stood. We'll be executing a search warrant tomorrow. In the meantime, don't leave the county. After they left, Claire stood at the window watching dust settle on the empty drive. Sargent whined, pushed his scarred head under her hand. They think I killed him, she whispered. Leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and whether you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do. The dog's certainty was absolute, unwavering. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She walked the property with a flashlight, Sargent ranging ahead, and tried to make sense of it. Marcus had been difficult. The farm was failing. He'd refused every offer to sell. His pride wouldn't let him admit defeat. But she'd loved him. They'd been rebuilding something after his deployment broke them both. She would never. Sargent stopped at the old barn, the one they hadn't used in years, boards weathered gray, foundation sinking. His hackles rose. What is it? The dog moved to the barn's north corner, began digging furiously at the foundation. Sargent, no. But he ignored her, paused throwing dirt, that focused intensity she recognized from his training videos. He wasn't playing. He was working. She pulled him back, shined her light into the shallow hole he'd started. Fresh concrete. Recent pour, maybe 6 weeks old. Right around when Marcus died. Her blood went cold. The next morning, she hired the only lawyer Harlow County had, Bill Ortega, 63, who handled real estate closings and the occasional DUI. He sat across from her in his cramped office above the hardware store, reviewing Marsh's evidence with increasingly grim expression. They have motive, means, and a witness, he said finally. Claire, I handle land disputes. You need a criminal defense attorney. Someone from the city. I can't afford that. You can't afford not to. He softened. Who would lie about you threatening Marcus? Claire had spent all night asking herself the same question. Only one answer made sense. Dale Pritchard, Marcus's cousin. He wanted to buy the farm, made an offer right after the funeral. I turned him down. Why would Dale frame you for murder just to get the property? I don't know. But Sargent found something. Fresh concrete under the old barn, poured around the time Marcus died. She leaned forward. Bill, what if whatever happened to Marcus is connected to that barn? What if someone needed him gone to hide something? Ortega studied her. You're talking about digging up private property based on your dog's instincts. He's a trained cadaver doc. Or was, before his injury. She'd learned Sargent's history from his VA handler. 2 tours, dozens of recoveries, until the IED that tore his shoulder and ended his service. If he says something's buried there, something's buried there. And if you dig without a warrant and find nothing, you look guilty and desperate. Ortega closed the folder. Let me make some calls. See what Dale Pritchard's been up to. You, stay away from that barn. Don't give Marsh any ammunition. But as Claire walked back to her truck, Sargent beside her, she knew she couldn't wait. Whatever was under that barn had gotten Marcus killed, and someone was making sure she'd take the fall for it. The dog looked up at her, patient, trusting. Tonight, she told him quietly. We dig tonight. Claire waited until 2 a.m., when the county road was silent and the farmhouse lights were dark for miles. She'd parked her truck in the equipment shed, worked by flashlight, Sargent standing guard at the barn entrance with his ears forward, alert. The shovel bit into earth beside the fresh concrete. The pour was small, maybe 3 feet square, deliberate. Someone had mixed concrete out here, poured a patch, covered it with dirt and debris to hide it. She dug carefully around the edges. 2 feet down, Sargent's body language changed. He moved closer, whining low. That specific alert she'd seen in the training videos, human remains. Claire's hands were shaking. She widened the hole, worked faster. The shovel hit something at 3 feet. Not concrete. Plastic. She dropped to her knees, brushed dirt away with her hands. A waterproof bag, contractor grade, sealed with duct tape. Heavy. She hauled it up, carried it to her truck. Sargent pressed against her side. Her mind was racing. Call the police. Call Bill Ortega. Don't open it alone. But her hands were already tearing the tape. Inside, files. Dozens of them. She spread them across the truck bed under her flashlight. Survey maps of her property. Water rights documents. Geological reports. And a contract. Preliminary purchase agreement between Pritchard Development LLC and Apex Energy Solutions for mineral rights to the Hendricks property. Dated 3 months before Marcus died. Claire's breath caught. The property sat over the Marcellus Shale Formation. Fracking rights. Dale hadn't wanted the farm for sentiment. He wanted what was underneath it. There was more. Emails between Dale and someone named R. Vance discussing the Marcus problem. Discussing how Marcus refused to sell. How he'd made his choice. A final email dated 2 days before Marcus's death. It's handled. Tractor's ready. Make sure you're visible in town that morning. The world tilted. Dale had killed Marcus. Sabotaged the tractor, established his own alibi, then tried to buy the farm from the widow. When Claire refused, he'd framed her. The witness who claimed she'd threatened Marcus was probably on Dale's payroll. And Marcus must have found these documents, hidden them before he died. That's why he'd been shot. Not a tractor accident. The tractor was staged. She had to call the police. She reached for her phone. Headlights swept the drive. Claire killed her flashlight, grabbed Sargent's collar. A truck rolled to a stop behind the barn. Dale Pritchard's F-250. He emerged with another man, both carrying shovels and a tarp. Told you we should have moved it sooner, the other man was saying. If that detective gets a warrant, relax. I own the sheriff. He'll bury the warrant request. Dale's voice was cold, certain. We dig up the evidence tonight, dump it in the quarry, and tomorrow Claire Hendricks gets arrested for murder. Property goes to probate. I buy it from the estate. Clean. They walked toward the barn, toward the hole Claire had just dug. She had seconds. She shoved the files back in the bag, hauled it into the truck cab, and pulled out her phone. No signal. The property was a dead zone. She'd have to drive to the county road. But Dale and his partner had just found the excavation. Someone's been digging. Dale's shout cut through the darkness. Check the house. Claire was already moving. Sargent in the truck bed, engine starting. She gunned it toward the back access road, the rutted path that led to the highway through the woods. Behind her, Dale's headlights swung around. The chase was on. The old Ford bounced over ruts and rocks, branches scraping the sides. Claire's hands were white-knuckled on the wheel. In the rearview mirror, Dale's truck was gaining, newer, faster, furious. The back road ended at a fence line. Claire slammed the brakes, grabbed the evidence bag and Sargent, and ran into the woods. Behind her, Dale's truck skidded to a stop. "She's on foot." Dale's voice. "Find her." The woods were black, treacherous with deadfall and ravines. Claire ran on muscle memory. Childhood knowledge of this land. Sargent stayed at her hip, silent, trained. Behind them, flashlights bobbed, men crashing through undergrowth. She knew where she was going. The old fire tower, 2 miles through the woods, at the county line. It had radio equipment for emergencies. She could call for help. Her lungs burned. The evidence bag caught on branches. She kept moving. A shot cracked through the trees. Claire dove behind a fallen oak. Sargent pressed against her. Another shot, closer. They weren't trying to capture her. They were trying to eliminate the witness. "Claire!" Dale's shout echoed. "You can't prove anything. Those files mean nothing without context. Make this easy." She stayed silent, calculating. The fire tower was a quarter-mile ahead. If she could reach it, Sargent's growl was barely audible. Someone was circling, trying to flank them. She whistled, short, sharp, the command for attack. The German Shepherd launched through the darkness. A man's scream, thrashing, then silence. Sargent returned, blood on his muzzle, the other man's flashlight in his teeth. "Good boy," Claire whispered. She used the stolen light to navigate the last quarter-mile, emerged at the fire tower's base. The metal stairs rang under her boots as she climbed, Sargent bounding up beside her. At the top, the radio room was dusty, abandoned, but the emergency beacon still had battery. She hit the distress button, grabbed the radio mic. "This is Claire Hendricks at the old fire tower, county line. I have evidence of a murder and I'm being hunted. Repeat, shots fired. I need immediate help." The door below crashed open. Dale's voice. "End of the line, Claire." She looked at Sargent. The dog looked back, steady, certain. "Guard," she commanded, pointing at the stairs. The German Shepherd positioned himself at the top of the stairwell, teeth bared, a 90-pound barrier between Claire and the men below. Dale appeared on the stairs, gun raised. He saw the dog and stopped. "Call him off, or I shoot him." "You shoot him, you'll have to shoot me," Claire said quietly. "And my distress call is already broadcasting. State police will hear it. You kill us both, you don't get the farm. You get death row." Dale's face twisted. "You don't understand what's at stake. The mineral rights are worth $40 million. $40 million. Marcus was too stubborn to see it. You're too stupid. I'm not stupid enough to murder for money. Marcus's death was an accident." Dale's composure was cracking. The tractor was just supposed to scare him, make him reconsider. He wasn't supposed to die. The admission hung in the air. Below, sirens began to wail. The distress beacon had worked. Dale's partner bolted, crashing back through the woods. Dale stood on the stairs, gun shaking, looking at Claire and the evidence bag and the dog who wouldn't let him pass. "It's over," Claire said. Dale lowered the gun. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It is." The state police arrived 10 minutes later. 3 cruisers, lights blazing, Detective Marsh in the lead. Claire descended the fire tower stairs with Sargent at her heel, the evidence bag clutched in her arms, and watched Dale Pritchard get handcuffed beside his truck. Marsh's expression was unreadable. "Mrs. Hendricks, you want to explain why you're in the woods at 3 a.m. with a bag of documents?" Claire handed it over. "That's why my husband was murdered. And that's her killer." It took 3 hours at the state police barracks for Claire to give her statement. Everything from Sargent's initial alert at the barn to Dale's confession at the fire tower. Marsh reviewed the files in silence, her face growing progressively harder. "The emails alone are enough for conspiracy to commit murder," she said finally. "The geological surveys prove motive. And we have his admission on your radio transmission. It recorded automatically." She looked at Claire with something that might have been respect. "Your dog found what we would have missed. Sargent's a professional." Claire's hand rested on the dog's head. "He was doing his job. So were you." Marsh closed the folder. "I owe you an apology. The witness who claimed you threatened your husband was Dale's foreman. He's already flipped, confirming Dale paid him to lie. We had tunnel vision. Widow with financial motive is easy. Cousin with 40 million reasons is complicated. You were doing your job too. Marsh almost smiled. You're more forgiving than I'd be. She stood. You're free to go? We'll meet you for the trial, but Dale's not making bail. Neither is his partner. We picked him up at the county line. Your husband's case is officially a homicide investigation now. Outside, dawn was breaking over the county buildings. Bill Ortega waited by his car, looking rumpled and worried. Claire. They called me, said you'd been brought in. I'm okay. She was exhausted, covered in dirt and scratches, but the weight that had been crushing her chest for 7 weeks had lifted. Marcus didn't die because of the farm failing. He died because he wouldn't sell it to a killer. The state police seized Dale's records. The fracking contract would have made him rich, but the company required clear title, no disputes, no complications. Marcus's refusal to sell made him a complication. Ortega's voice was gentle. He loved this place. He died protecting it. Claire nodded, throat tight. What happens to the property now? It's yours. Free and clear. The insurance company's already reversing their fraud investigation. They'll pay the full accidental death benefit. Plus, the mineral rights contract is void. Dale forged Marcus's signature on the preliminary agreement. You own everything under that land. So some other fracking company will come calling. Probably. Ortega studied her. What will you do? Claire looked at Sargent, who looked back with absolute trust, and thought about Marcus, stubborn, broken, but still capable of love, still fighting for something that mattered. Thought about the farmhouse where they'd planned to raise children, the land that had been in his family for 3 generations, the well she'd been trying to fix, and the debts she'd been drowning in. I'm going to keep it, she said. Fix it up. Make it work. The mineral rights alone could set you up for life. I know. She smiled, small but genuine. But some things aren't for sale. 6 months later, Claire stood in the rebuilt barn. New roof, reinforced foundation, the north corner now solid concrete, with no secrets buried beneath. She'd used part of the insurance settlement to drill a new well, repair the equipment, hire seasonal help. The farm was still struggling, still demanding every hour of every day, but it was breathing. Sargent had his own space in the barn, a climate-controlled corner with a bed and water dish, though he usually slept on the porch. The county had asked if she'd consider training him for official search and rescue. His find in her case had made the regional news, drawn attention to retired military working docs. She'd said yes. They trained 3 evenings a week now, both of them learning new purpose in old skills. The trial had been quick. Dale pleaded guilty in exchange for 30 years instead of life. His partner got 20. The foreman who'd lied about Claire got probation and a ruined reputation. Detective Marsh had testified about the evidence, about Claire's courage in the woods, about the dog who'd refused to let a killer pass. Marcus's grave was at the county cemetery, under an oak. Claire visited every Sunday, told him about the farm, the harvest, the small victories. She'd added a line to his headstone. He stood his ground. A truck rolled up the drive. Bill Ortega, carrying papers. Claire, the state approved your conservation easement. She met him on the porch. The easement was her compromise. She'd sold the development rights to a land trust, ensuring the property could never be subdivided or commercially developed, while retaining ownership and mineral rights. The trust had paid enough to clear the remaining debts. The mineral rights she'd licensed to a university research program studying low-impact extraction. Clean energy, no fracking. Modest income, but sustainable. You did it, Ortega said. The farm's protected. Forever. Marcus did it. I just finished what he started. That evening, she sat on the porch watching sunset paint the fields gold. Sargent lay at her feet, chin on his paws, content. In the distance, she could see the old fire tower where she'd made her stand, where the truth had finally outrun the lies. Her phone buzzed. A text from the search and rescue coordinator. Training exercise tomorrow, 6 a.m. Bring Sargent. We have a missing hiker case. Might go operational. Claire smiled. You hear that? We've got work. The dog's tail thumped once, certain. She'd learned something in the months since Marcus's death. Grief doesn't disappear, but it transforms. Becomes fuel instead of weight. Becomes purpose. She'd lost her husband, nearly lost her freedom, but she'd found something too. Strength she didn't know she had, and a partner who'd stand beside her against anything. The farmhouse light glowed warm in the gathering dark. Somewhere in the fields, cicadas began their evening song. The well pump hummed, steady and sure. The land Marcus had died protecting stretched out around her, safe now, preserved, a legacy that would outlast them all. Claire stood, whistled for Sargent. Come on, let's go home. Together they walked toward the house. The widow who'd been framed, the dog who'd dug up the truth. Both of them survivors, both of them scarred, both of them exactly where they belonged. The porch light stayed on. The watch continued. And in the morning, there would be work to do.